All right, everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. We have another episode today and another special guest, like I always like to say. Dominic, thanks for coming on, and feel free to introduce yourself to everyone.
I'm 18 years old to start, and I'm a football coach, or soccer as we call it in Canada. Long journey, and yeah, I'm happy to be on first and foremost. Started at the age of 12, the journey into coaching, and 18 years old now, 6 years later. We keep on going, we keep on moving, and I want to push for bigger and better things.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a unique journey, and I'm glad we'll dive into it more and more as we go through the episode. First things off, let's start with your actual career, your playing career. Start off. So yeah, I know you played at Sigma. Was that throughout your whole career? Kind of get things started from the early days. How did you fall in love with football, and how did you start playing?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the age of around 8, I probably started with Oakville Soccer Club, just because it was near me. As a player there, not very good level. I wasn't great. I was just playing for the rep team there. Then one of my friends asked me to come to Sigma. Uh, and I went there and obviously spent sort of the rest of my playing career there from around the age of 10 or 11 up to the age of around 17. So last year I ended my playing career. And so short playing career, not long, retired very early. Um, but it was a good journey and I really enjoyed it.
And what were some of the like as a you like you said you started really looking at coaching at the age of 12, and now you're only 18 now. What were some of the early signs that like you knew you wanted to be a coach? I kind of had a similar journey where throughout my playing days I knew playing pro or anything like that was always a dream in a sense, but it was never really, I knew wasn't going to be a reality, and I wasn't going to fully enjoy it. What were some of those first signs that made you realize like, oh, maybe I want to try the coaching side of things?
Yeah, so at Sigma, obviously it's a top level club and I wasn't a top player there. So I understood the reality of it and I understood that I wouldn't make it pro. That was the first sort of aspect of it. And obviously in Canada, we have a lot of players that want to make it pro, but at the end of the day, a lot of them have aspirations that are a little bit unrealistic. So I think it was good that I was realistic in that sense, and it was important for me. The first sign probably for me was I was very interested in tactics. I loved watching football. Um, I was a Liverpool fan at the time. I still am, but I don't watch them so much anymore. And I just always watched their games, always predicted the starting lineup, all these kinds of things at a young age, at around the age of 12. Then at around the age of 14, I had a very, very good coach that I won't forget till the day I die. And one at the end of sort of his time with me, he gave me sort of a poster and it said, your determination on and off the pitch is simply put on a different level. And that resonated with me at that age. That really resonated with me because it helped me understand the feelings that a coach can give to a player. And I wanted to give that feeling to players. That was something I wanted to do. And never mind the tactics and all that. I was very interested in that even at that age. But that sort of man management and the emotional connection between the coach and the player was what really got me into it. And then, yeah, it just went from there.
And before we get more into the coaching side of things, let's start with more of the educational side and what you're currently working on. So to start, you're at the university, Arizona State University. I know you're kind of working on a few different projects at the same time, but let's start with Arizona State. What are you taking there, and what was kind of the idea behind enrolling? I believe you're in an online course. If you want to talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. So, Bachelor of Arts in Psychology that I'm pursuing at the moment. So my first year in coaching, it was as a U15 assistant coach. It was on a volunteer basis. And I remember at that time, I always took notes into my notebook and it was always based on the psychology of coaching, the psychology aspect of it. It's something I'm very interested in. I love man management and I love connecting with players and getting the best out of players and trying to do it as consistently as possible. And that's something that has interested me. And that's the reason I really pursued it. Another reason it's a bit of a niche. It's a bit of a niche topic. A lot of coaches like to pursue the sports science sort of pathway, or the
Hmm.
coaching pathway, the sort of English side of things. I decided to go a little bit of a different path in terms of the Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and it's something that yeah, I'm happy I'm doing, and I've really enjoyed it so far in my first year.
And then at the same time, you're working on your master's as well, and I believe it was tactical periodization at the
Yes.
University of Porto. So let's get into kind of the more of the soccer side of your education. Obviously, you have a few of your licenses. Let's start with the master's. What was the what's kind of the reason you wanted to start your master's a little? Most would finish a bachelor's in a sense first, but you're starting a little early. But I think there's reasons behind that. So you want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the start of this year, I watched a video, and it was from Mark DeSantos with
Hmm.
the same school that I'm doing the course with. And the video basically dove into tactical periodization in depth. And just seeing Mark and seeing a guy that I've inspired to sort of be like and push towards, and just seeing his knowledge on that and seeing the depth of tactical periodization. It's something that I've pursued, but again, it's not the only methodology that there is out there. It's one out of the three main methodologies that there are out there. It's the first one I want to really pursue, but then I'm open to pursuing the other two as well. But yeah, it's something I enjoy. It's something that I'm currently using with the clubs I've worked with. At Sigma, I used it with the boys there, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot from my experiences with it, and yeah, just always trying to grow as a coach.
And let's get into. So you obviously have quite a few licenses. We were speaking a little bit before we started recording here. You're working on your A license right now. Talk through the licenses you've completed so far, and how that journey's kind of impacted your coaching side of things as well. And then like I said, what you're working on now and what you plan to complete in the future.
Yeah, so licenses. So I started really young. Little secret about that. The actual legal age to start a license is 16. Yeah, at least the UEFA licenses. I put my age, I put as if I'm a 2004. I'm actually a 2005, so I started a year earlier than you're allowed to. The Scottish FA actually found that out a few weeks ago, and it was kind of funny. But anyways, I went on my UEFA C license when I was 15 years old. I traveled there. It was a special experience for me and my family. It was really cool. Then obviously I progressed forward towards the UEFA B license, which I completed last year. And then obviously now I'm on my way to complete the UEFA A and Elite Youth A licenses. So that's something I'm excited about. And ultimately, the objective is obviously to get on the UEFA Pro license as soon as possible, and ultimately become the youngest with that license in the history of the game. That's my ultimate aspiration. And that's why I maybe cheated the year. Might be one of the reasons.
And do you want to go into, some people may not know the coaching licenses and the difference of levels, especially between, like, let's say your Canadian licenses and your AFA, and then also the C, B, and A license. Do you want to go into
Yeah.
kind of the levels and why they're there, and kind of how you work through them?
Yeah, so obviously you start off with the UEFA C. Even in Scotland, actually, or UEFA, you actually start off with the like 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, which is sort of the grassroots education. But I had to do that because I wasn't a professional player. So if I was a
Hmm.
professional player, I could start off with the UEFA B, but I had to start all the way from the bottom. So I went through all of it. It was a lot of early mornings, waking up at 2 a.m. and all of that, um, just because of the time difference. But it was all cool. It was all worth the process and worth the pain, I guess. So UEFA C, then UEFA B, and obviously UEFA A is next. I'm obviously completing that right now, and then the pro license is the highest level of license you can have. Um, to touch on licenses, to be honest, I don't use them a lot, or I don't really find them helpful. The idea behind licenses is they're a baseline for coaches. You could see who's UEFA A licensed and who's UEFA Pro licensed, but at the end of the day, if I'm being completely honest, there's a lot of excellent UEFA B licensed coaches that don't have their A or their Pro, and there's a lot of not so good Pro licensed coaches. So the licensing, again, it means something, but at the end of the day, there's a lot more to coaching that isn't shown through the license.
And you mentioned being the youngest UEFA Pro license holder. Do you know who the youngest is by any chance? Is there
Yeah,
is there a
it's
record of that?
Carlos. Yeah, there's Carlos Cuesta at Arsenal. So he did it as a 26-year-old. So hopefully I
Oh,
can
okay.
beat that.
Yeah, you got a few years ahead of you. No, that's good.
I do,
And
yeah.
you actually mentioned I have this question in later on, but I want to ask it now that we're kind of talking about age. Um, what are some of the difficulties you have now coaching at such a young age? It's not frowned
Yeah.
upon, but it's looked at like most coaches. You're in your past your playing your full playing career. You're kind of older, maybe a father figure in a sense, but some people can look
Yeah,
at an 18-year-old and kind of have a negative look at it. What do you have to say to
absolutely.
kind of those people, and what do you have behind you that maybe someone that's older might not have the same skill set?
Yeah, so I actually, funny story, I spoke to a person from MŠK Žilina here in Slovakia today about a similar topic to the one you just mentioned. And he basically told me, he explained that there are going to be people who try to stop you because of how fast you're trying to push through your journey. And there's going to be a lot of those people. And I've experienced those people a lot. There's been a lot of people who look at my age and say, this guy knows nothing. And at the end of the day, I have no problem with that. At the end of the day, I also acknowledge that I don't have as much practical experience as other coaches. I lack the practical experience, but what I will say is my knowledge of theory is quite high. Um, and I don't want to be arrogant and I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think it's one of the best in Canada. That's the theory part, but obviously the practical part is very important. And even if you have the theory, it's not just transferable into the practical sense. So it's good to have theory, especially if you're an assistant or you're a video analyst. It's good to have the understanding of the theory, but realistically, it's the practical aspect that is most important. To tell something to those people that look at my age, I would just say, just look at you. Look at you. I think everybody has to focus on their journey in coaching. I think that's something that I've done quite a good job at so far in my journey. I've looked on me and I focused on me and I focused on my journey. I haven't really looked at other people's journeys. While I also like to follow them and connect with these people, I try to focus on my journey and my ambitions and try to strive towards them each day with everything I do.
And so you mentioned you came through the Sigma FC, the academy or the club in a sense. It's known across Canada as kind of one of the best producers of talent, especially now. I've been to a few of the FTF showcases. They obviously have a deep connection with Forge, the professional team in Hamilton. What were some of the first cases where you saw players either under you or just whether it was one of the League One teams that you were working with in general? What were some of the real star players that you were able to see now in your first few years of coaching, or potentially stories that you know of that of players that have played there and have gone on to have a successful career professionally or even collegiate wise?
Yeah, I don't want to point out too many names specifically,
Hmm.
but to look at it more from a general stance, I think the success of guys like Zane Bruno or Daniel Furick or Kevon Tavernier, all these guys that I've sort of been around at the academy, and seeing them get the developmental contracts, it's huge. It's huge. It's really cool to see. And to see their evolution is also cool because someone like Zane Bruno is someone that was sort of the first player I connected with when I started getting into coaching. So at around the age of 14, I had chats with him. I wanted to help him improve, and I saw this kid is hungry to learn, even from someone that's 2 years older than him. So that was always cool to see. And I think that's a mentality that's across the club. The players are willing to learn. The players want to learn. And I think that culture is important to build. If you don't have that culture built in a club, and the players won't want to listen to you as a coach. And it's all about making sure that you're accepted as a coach and that they value your opinion. So then you're actually helping them and they're actually listening to you. And I think, yeah, the evolution of, as I said, Zane Bruno has been super, and I'm excited to see what's next for him in terms of his path and his journey. Hopefully in the professional game soon, but we'll see how it goes for him.
Hmm. And so you grew up in Canada. You obviously speak English. You're in Slovakia now. I think you speak Slovakian, French, Spanish, and Danish. Either a somewhat of a level of each of those. How did
Yeah.
you kind of get into each of those languages, and what is the impact on coaching side and just general career wise?
Yeah, absolutely. So Slovakian, I speak with my parents all the time, speak with my family. So I'm completely fluent in that. English, obviously, I was born in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, so I should know that quite well. French aspect, obviously, I learned in school. So that's been really good for me. I learned it all the way from, I think it was grade five and onwards through high school. So always taking courses through school, which helped me out a lot. And then obviously that I would say I'm around 50, 60 to 70% fluency. And then Spanish, I took a separate course, so that was through Speak Spanish Academy, and I started that. I think that was about 18 months ago. Did that for around 12 months, basically quite intensely. So it was around 6 hours a week, and I'd say I'm around probably 40 to 50% fluency in that. And then Danish, I'm just starting to learn now, so that's just a process that I'm starting to
Hmm.
pick up. Um, Not something that I'm as intensely worried about right now, but I would like to learn the language at some point.
So yeah, so getting back onto kind of the traveling side, we were mentioning the language, so now travel. You've been able to take a few trips with your not only your licenses, but just on your own. Like you said, you're on more of on a networking trip now in Slovakia. What have those experiences like? I'm sure you've been able to watch football now in a few different countries and regions in the world. Um, how is it seeing that side of things now? Also seeing kind of the Canadian side and bringing that all together into your own style of play. How does that affect it?
Yeah, at the end of the day, the reality is in Canada, we're still far behind. So going to the European countries and seeing how they do things, it's always good for me. I've been to quite a few countries now. As a player, I had the pleasure of going to Belgium, Germany, and Holland. So that was cool and understanding the culture there, the footballing culture. And now as a coach, I've also traveled to different countries. I've been to Poland, Slovakia, Portugal, Denmark. So different countries and different footballing environments. And just gaining as much as I can from every single one. And you start to see some good coaches in some places, some not so good coaches in other places. But at the end of the day, it's all just people doing things in different ways. And I think learning from the different ways and taking what you want out of it is really important. But it's about really being a sponge with the information that you're trying to receive. I think I'm quite good at that. So I've took a lot from these trips and also learning from people in different positions. Today I spoke to a U13 coach, but I also spoke to the academy director. So different positions, different understanding of football, with different knowledge and different experiences, and it's all good in the journey.
And what are some key figures that you look up to in terms of really grabbing that knowledge? Like, I'm sure you have an inner circle of either whether it's just one coach or multiple coaches that you look up to
Yeah,
and kind of try to get information from, but also in
yeah,
terms of the professional side where people will know, like your Pep Guardiola's, your Jurgen Klopp's, who on that side do you look up to as well?
yeah. To be honest, it's one that I always get critiqued for, but I don't look up to a professional coach. This is not one that really I would say excites me. There's a lot of things that excite me in professional football, but what I would say is everything that I like to do, I try to create by myself. Whether it be my game model or my training model, I try to create it through my thinking and through my thought and through a lot of observation of different levels and how things work and trying to piece things together. I really like to make the analogy of coaching being like a puzzle. It's piecing things together and seeing what works for you. So at the end of the day, what is your puzzle going to look like? What figure is going to be on the puzzle? And there's different ways to build that puzzle. Not There's not one better way than the other. But at the end of the day, we all have our own journey and we're trying to build our puzzles. And for me, it's been about trying to grab as much as possible from coaches at all levels. And I think that's been an important part of my journey.
And do you have specific principles or values that you really try to drive into a team or into players that are playing under you or playing with you that are, yeah, like I said, unique, that are maybe different from others, or you have a different approach to how you coach?
In terms of values, it's usually quite similar. I think coaches around the world usually have quite similar thoughts. There's some things that are usually unique depending on what approach you take. But for me, one that's very important and has become more important for me over the past few months as I've been sort of thinking a little bit more and doing a little bit less, it's been accountability. Accountability. And I think accountability in different places, they do it in different ways. For example, in some countries, it's data driven, where if you're not performing to a certain data-based standard, then you're held accountable. There's a problem as a player. But other countries, it's more subjective, where the eye sees it. So it's different things like that and understanding how you want to measure accountability. But the one key principle that's always going to be there for me is accountability for sure. I think players need to be accountable. I think coaches need to be held accountable. And I think if everybody's held accountable, the standard naturally rises of the environment. And at the end of the day, it's the environment that you create that's going to drive your successes. So the environment has to be good. If the environment's not good, then you're not going to have success. It's the environment, that's everything.
And on the tactical side, do you have a unique approach in that sense? Like I'm sure you've been able to kind of pull all these different aspects from all these people that you've been able to learn from. Do you have kind of a unique style
Yeah.
or something that sets you apart?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely unique. It's my way of playing or how I want to play is definitely never been seen before. But at the end of the day, I haven't had enough practical experience to know if it's going to work at the highest and highest levels or if it's not going to work. But what I do know for sure is I would have the courage to try it. I would have the courage to try my game model and my training model and how I do things in a different way. And definitely in both the game model and the training model, I do things differently to a lot of coaches. Definitely in Canada, and then there's also probably similarities, but a lot of things are different and a lot of things are unique. And that comes from me. My first sort of learning experience about football was from me myself. It wasn't from any external sources. It wasn't from whether it be licenses or whatever. It was at the age of 12, I started thinking about the game and started thinking, how do I want my players to play? At the age of 14, it started getting more intense in that sense, but it was always about thinking and thinking and thinking, and unique ideas came about. But then when the unique ideas come about, then it's also about unlearning some ideas. So you might have too much almost complexity or information within your brain, and some of it you have to take out of it. I think that's very, very important, and I think that's something that I've grown into and I've matured a little bit over the past few months and understood that you can't use all the information you obtain. You have to pick your way. You have to pick your methodology. Um, and yeah, if you follow the methodology and you commit to it, then you're going to have success. If you're passionate about it and you really truly believe in the methodology, you sort of hunt after, I like to say, then it's going to give you success. But you really have to be passionate about it. The nice analogy I like to use is I like to say that as a game model, as a reference, it has to represent you as a person. For example, I'd say
Hmm.
in life, I'm more of a hunt person. I like to hunt after my goals. It wouldn't make sense for me to sit in a low block. It just wouldn't make sense
Hmm.
because that's not what I am like in life. In life, I like to hunt after things. So in the game, I like to press. And because I'm passionate about those values and principles, then it's going to make it easier for me to coach them and also easier for them to be embedded within the players. The players will know I'm not faking it. They'll know I'm being really true and really showing myself. And I think that's the most important in coaching.
We've had a question that I've started asking a few people now more recently, as I think it's something from a listener's point of view, you might not really have access to what is a day in the life of a footballer. You get to see that quite often in terms of on YouTube or whatever it is. Sometimes you see the coaching side as well, but there's many of these other roles in the football industry, but also just sports business in general, where you really don't know what a day in the life looks like. So for you in your kind of transition now, where you're transitioning from one role, you're kind of in educational learning spot right now, and now you're looking for your next place to transition to. What is a day in the life right now? And even let's go back into when you were working with Sigma more on a full time basis with the League One team. What was your kind of day to day there as well?
Yeah, so just going back to my Sigma days, obviously I was in school as well in high school. I was still quite young. So obviously going to school at around 3 p.m., I usually came home. And then it was about session design. It was about watching football. It was all these kinds of things. It was all football related. So from 3 p.m. To whatever time I went to bed. More recently, it became quite late, and it became the 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Um, sleep schedule, which wasn't cool. But yeah, it was a lot of work and session planning, and um, not only just session planning, but also working on the model that I'm trying to implement and really learning from everything that I gained from Sigma, learning from the practical experiences, most importantly, and trying to create a model that resonates with me, that really excites me, and that also excites others around the world. Um, and to be honest, to share that, I had the opportunity to share my model today um, with members of staff here in Emeška in Slovakia, and they found it unique, they found it new, and they found it different, definitely different to what they're used to. And I think that uniqueness and really connecting with people worldwide, I think that's what makes the game most beautiful. I think we don't have enough of those coaches in Canada. I think we need more unique coaches, more coaches that want to innovate, more coaches that are scared to make mistakes, scared to fail. Because at the end of the day, with my U15s and the League One team, I had a lot of failures. I had a lot of failures, but I learned from every single one of them, and I tried to learn from every single one of them. And I think if you do that, then that sets you up quite well. Um, but to go back to the question, because I kind of went away from it, the day in the life now of me is again all football. I'm visiting clubs here in Slovakia that I'm really enjoying some fantastic academies that have developed some top players for the national team. So really cool stuff, good networking opportunities, and it's all about working on the models as well for me. So if I'm not on the training pitch, watching sessions or watching a match at the stadium, then I'm working on the model, the game model, the training model, the philosophy document, whatever it may be. It's just trying to understand how I want to do things. And the more information you get, the more complex that becomes and the more difficult it becomes to understand how you want to do things because your brain becomes flooded with information. But again, it's as I said, it's about unlearning and understanding what you want to commit to. What process do you want to commit to? And then obviously going towards the goal that you ultimately have.
So we'll get into the insiders lounge favorites, I like to call them. And for the first one, I always mention how the soccer industry is very, especially for players and people that are really in the day to day of soccer or football. You have these crazy highs and lows, and it's all about trying to balance your emotional balance so that you can just try and stay calm throughout these different like crazy ups and downs. What are some of the biggest
Yeah.
challenges that you've had to kind of break through, and how have those helped you now with your career and hopefully your future?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm not scared to admit is that I'm quite an emotional guy. So when we lost, even with the U15s, even though it's just the U15 level, um, I get quite sad and it's quite a low. And all those lows, it's about how you react to them. So some of the lows that I had, I felt really bad. To not swear on here, I felt really bad. And at the end of the day, it's about the immediate reaction. How quickly can you react? So if I came off a 3-0 loss, then it was about how quickly can I get onto my Mac and how quickly can I get back to work thinking about the game again. And just always trying to get back into it. After the highs, one thing I definitely learned this year is that I was a little bit too high off the highs. So I didn't have the temperance to remain at a steady level. And that's something obviously you gain from experience. You gain it from experience, but I think the understanding of how much you should celebrate after a win has to be balanced. Because if you get too high, then you start losing focus a little bit, and then you get killed in the next match. It happened to me a few times, and I think those are the biggest experiences that I've gained from this year. And I've definitely matured in that sense. It's also even within a match, those experiences happen where you might be up by 2 goals and thinking everything's going great, like I had on my League One debut. But then halftime, you do something wrong, and obviously a learning experience for me. And then you lose the game 3-2 in the end. So it's all these kinds of things and all these ups and downs that really help you towards your journey.
And if there's someone listening who might be in a similar situation you were just a few years ago, where they kind of realize, look, I'm not really meant for the playing side of things, and I want to get into the coaching side, maybe at a younger age than is normally looked upon. What are some words of advice for people that are in that situation that you were, let's say, a few years ago?
Yeah, I think most importantly, the one sort of phrase I would use is impossible is nothing. Um, and the reason I say that is because I'm an 18-year-old from Mississauga, Ontario, born in Canada, and I'm on track to become the youngest UEFA Pro licensed in history, which is obviously something that's cool. Um, and yeah, I think it should motivate people and it should get people inspired. And if it does, that's great. That's also something that's an added bonus for me. Obviously, I'm ambitious and I have high goals. And for people that might be how I was a few years ago. What I will say is, if you do go into coaching, you have to love it and you have to be passionate about it. Because if you're not going to make it to a point where you're going to make a salary out of it. And if you're just going to go through the licenses and go through that process, it's not for you. It's definitely not for you. And there's a lot of coaches in Canada like that, that just go through the licenses and then want to make an extra buck out of it and want to post on Instagram that I won 3-0 because I completed my A license. So I'm now a good coach. Coaching is definitely a process. And it's a lot of commitment, a lot of time. And if you're not committed, then it's not going to work out well for you. You have to be committed and you have to be willing to put in the long hours. I've had many sleepless nights over the past year, many long evenings, many early mornings, but it's all part of the process. And I think you really have to commit to it. If you don't, it's not for you. It really isn't. Just like as a football player, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. You have to be committed. You have to love it, and you have to love it more than anything else.
And we're heading into the end of 2023, almost into 2024 now. Do you have are you the type of person to set goals for yourself, like kind of do your New Year's resolutions of kind of what you aim to strive for, or is it just an everyday grind type of thing? What side are you?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's an everyday sort of thing. It's an everyday sort of thing. But if I would look ahead to 2024, it would be to complete that UEFA A and Elite Youth A license. And then, yeah, just other stuff from there. Hopefully everything goes well, and I'm excited for what 2024 brings upon me.
And if we sat down, this is a kind of similar question in a sense, but if we sat down and like let's say 10 years, so you're 28 years old, where do you
Yeah.
think you'd be, and how do you think your life will change? We can say career wise in terms of coaching, but also just maybe in general, maybe some other points you have there.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have much away from coaching. I'm quite full on with coaching. In 10 years' time, probably where I'd want to be an assistant coach in a professional club. Um, if it would be a head coaching role, that would be cool. Um, but yeah, definitely in a professional club in the highest level possible, and just learning and learning and learning. For me, the professional game intrigues me the most and what I'm most inclined towards. Not that I'm not interested in the youth game, but I think I'm a bit of a tactical nerd and I have been. So the professional game definitely inclines me a little bit more, and that's where I want to be in the near future, but also the long-term future as well.
All right, that was great. We'll get into some of the quick fire questions here to end off. First, you mentioned Liverpool as being one of your teams you supported. Is that like your? I know it's a little bit more difficult as you get into coaching or working in the sports industry. It's sometimes
Yes.
hard to stick with a specific team to support. But would you say Liverpool is still kind of that team in your heart?
Yeah, it's definitely the team I follow on Instagram, so I definitely get the updates from them. But I definitely to also point out I don't watch any games anymore. I just think I don't have the time. I watch a lot more games
Mm,
based on the stuff that's closer to me. So, for example, CPL games, some League One games if I could catch them, some TFC games if I can, some youth national team games, whatever is a little bit closer to me. I like to watch if I have the time for it, but otherwise, I don't really watch a lot of Premier League. Um, yeah, that's just how I've been. But yes, Liverpool is still my team and always will be. It's just the connection isn't as strong as it used to be. It used to be crazy.
mm. And do you have a favorite quote or saying that you live by?
Ah, that's an interesting one. Um, yeah, the impossible is nothing is definitely a big one there because yeah, I think if you have ambitions and you want to strive towards them, I think I would say I've had a bit of an accelerated career path so far. But it can continue. It's just about not losing the motivation or the focus, or even when you do get on the high, like we spoke about before, not losing focus at that point. So if you get the professional contract or whatever you're striving towards, stay focused, stay grinding, keep on looking towards where you want to go next. And I think that's something, a bit of advice that I could give to everyone. Because some players that I've noticed in Canada is you come to a top team in Canada, a top team, and your ego is high because you think you're good as a player. The reality is there's hundreds of thousands of players in Europe that are better than you. You just can't see them. You're the best within your backyard, but you're not the best within the world. And I think that's something. I think that bit of humility has been something that's been important in my journey as well, because I know there's so many coaches out there that are so much better than me, and so much to learn from. Even within my own landscape, within League One over the past year, so many good coaches in there that I've learned from and that I've sort of spoken with over the past year. But then also, if you broaden your network and you look at Europe, then there's so many out there, so many with different knowledge and experiences, and it's just interesting to see. And if you can gain as much as possible from all of them, it's great. Just be like a sponge.
And I like to consider myself a bit of a foodie, I guess you could say. And so I always like to ask each guest one of their top recommendations of food spots. So I know you're from the GTA, but you're also traveling all over. So give us a recommendation of one spot that whether we're in the GTA or somewhere else that we have to go try.
Mm. Yeah, to be honest, it's a funny story because there's two things my mom hates about me. One is that I'm too close with football, and the other is that I eat too much. Those are my two things in life that I'm most passionate about. So yeah, I'm definitely a bit of a foodie myself as well. A good restaurant that I like is Plank. So it's on Bronte in Oakville. Really good food there. A little bit too expensive, so maybe go there for a birthday or something like that. But it's a good restaurant to go to. I love Chipotle as well,
Brilliant.
by the way.
And
Chipotle for fast food. Chipotle, brilliant,
Chipotle is a good one.
brilliant. Yes.
And favorite book? Do you have a favorite book that you like to read? Are you into reading? I always like to see how people approach. For me, I'm sometimes I pick up a book, I read it for a little bit, and then I forget about it. But now
Yeah.
recently, I've been really trying to stay focused and finish the books that I start reading.
Yeah. A lot of again another thing that a lot of people criticize me for. I don't read books at all. I don't read books at all. And the other part about it is I'm a bit of a visual learner, so you also have to understand yourself.
Hmm.
If you're gonna actually read a book, you have to be able to take something out of it. And I just read a page for 10 minutes and then I go back and think, what was that page about? I just don't understand it. So it's about understanding yourself, and I'm more of a video guy and visual guy. I have to see things to be able to understand them. I definitely don't read books. even if it's like I bought a sports science book about a year ago, and I tried to understand the content within it, and there were visuals there and stuff like that, so that was a little bit better. But yeah, even the books that I'm interested in, like a Jurgen Klopp book or anything like that, I can't relate to it. I don't enjoy it, so I don't read books.
So then in terms of visually learning, do you watch interviews, and like I know there's channels like Coach's Voice and things like that. Do you try and focus your learning more on that side of things, or how do you do that?
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to watch every single Jurgen Klopp interview. So every single
Hmm.
whenever I searched Jurgen Klopp on YouTube, it's just everything that popped up. I tried to watch. Now, as I get older, it's just as much football as possible, just as much football as possible,
Hmm.
taking in football. I don't like looking at too many sessions because, especially when it's on Instagram or it's on different media platforms, because I think it's giving something that might not be what's intended. So in the caption on Instagram, it might say this session is about this, but the actual coach that's leading the session might have a complete different intention behind the session. So I really like to actually speak with the coach in person if I'm going to watch a session. And I try to get to as many sessions live as possible. I really want to be live in the environment and feel the environment, feel the culture. I think that's always the best way to learn. I really want to be part of the environment. And then obviously speaking to coaches as well, it's a great form of learning.
Do you have any hobbies outside of soccer where sometimes you just need to you break the mental capacity of constantly being around soccer? Do you have anything just
Yeah.
to break it and relax for a little bit?
It's a tough one because to be honest, no. I
Mm.
used to be like I used to go on bike rides and stuff like that, but in the past year, nothing other than football. Everything's been football, and my mom's getting sick of me already. Even on this trip that we're on, well, trip, it's not really a trip, but I came from Canada about a week ago, and she said, "You're gonna have to stay without football for 1 month." And after 3 days, I just couldn't do it. I told her, Mom, I have to get somewhere. And she actually told me a funny story today. She told me a few years back when I didn't have football, I wasn't able to coach for I think it was 3 weeks because I'm not sure what it was exactly. I almost was depressed afterwards. And my mom thought it was something like I have a brain tumor or something, like I'm sick because my head was hurting and all that. But it was right as I came back onto the pitch, it was like a different feeling. It was a different feeling. So I just love being around the game. It's all I want to do in life. It's all I love.
No, it's great. It's a common answer. I think many of us that is our hobby, and so you can't really change. That's what we love, and it makes us feel better about ourselves. So I don't think you can really
Absolutely.
go away from that.
Yeah.
If you could sit down with one person for a meal, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Wow. That's hard. Um, really hard. You know what? I'll go just quick off my brain. I'll go Deserby, Roberto Deserby from Brighton, head coach there. I
Hmm.
think he's one of the sort of biggest innovators of the modern day game, and he's someone that's brought new principles into the game that, while they've been seen before, because principles always come and go, he's one that sort of brought them to a team that maybe doesn't have the didn't have in terms of other coaches and how they view it, didn't have the capacity to implement such a game model, but he's implemented it in a brilliant way. And I think it just goes back to the quote by Ange Postecoglou I saw. A lot of us coaches think based on the players and think that, oh, I have these players, so I have to do this game model. Why not just play your game model? Like I spoke about before, if you're passionate about it, go after it, no matter the players you have. And I think that's something Roberto De Zerbi has done, something that inspires me and that I really look up to. So definitely a guy I would love to speak with. And also Marcelo Bielsa. Sorry,
No,
Marcelo Bielsa is
oh,
a
that's a
huge
good
one.
one. No, that's great. That's all I've got for you. Do you have any final words just to say to whoever's listening, maybe where they want to, if they want to follow you on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever the best place to reach you at? And then yeah, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, reach me on Instagram if anyone wants to reach out and connect and go on a Zoom call. I'm always open to that kind of stuff. I always want to learn from different people. And if people learn from me, that's great as well. That's a bonus for me. But I always want to learn from different people. So please reach out to get on a Zoom call or to meet in person if I'm nearby you. I'd love to speak with anyone out there that has the same passion as I do. The one thing I will say about that is if there's someone that reaches out to me that doesn't have the same passion as me, it just doesn't work. Even within my coaching environment over the past year, I've seen if a player doesn't have the same passion as me, we can't get along. It just doesn't work. So I
Mm.
think you have to be as passionate as me to reach out to me, and feel free to do so.
Dominic, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to getting to see your journey unfold over the next few years and see where you get to. And yeah, thanks again for coming on, and we'll speak soon.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Take good care.